It was freezing that morning. Rain splashed on the pavement like tiny needles, and wind cut through coats like glass. But there she stood, at the corner of 6th Avenue and Grandview, not moving. Just holding her baby close, wrapped in nothing but a thin hospital blanket. People walked past. Some stared. Some didn't. Some whispered, "Another scam." Probably borrowed that baby just to beg. But she didn't shout. She didn't stretch out a cup. She just whispered, "Please, just some warm milk. My baby hasn't eaten since yesterday." And in that moment, something impossible happened. A black SUV rolled to a stop. A man in a $3,000 suit, someone who could have easily ignored her, stepped out. He walked right into the rain and looked straight into her eyes. "What's her name?" "Emily," she said, her voice barely louder than the rain. He didn't know her. She didn't know him. But in 60 seconds, he would make a decision that would change her life, and his forever. Because what he didn't know yet was that this woman wasn't homeless because she was lazy. She wasn't broken because she made bad choices. She was forgotten by the system, left behind by someone she loved, and holding on to the last thing she still believed in, her child. And what she didn't know was that the man standing in front of her had just come back from a funeral. His heart was already cracked open. He was searching for meaning, for something, anything real, and she was about to give it to him. But what happens when hope arrives too late? What if one piece of paper, smaller than a credit card, disappears into a storm drain? Before she ever gets the chance to call? Keep watching. Because this isn't a story about rich saves poor. This is a story about how two strangers, from two broken places, can rewrite each other's destinies and remind us that even when life is falling apart, kindness can still rebuild everything. Her name was Rachel Monroe. She used to be someone. Not famous, not rich, but someone. She once had a job at a small library in Birmingham, Alabama. She read books to kids on Saturday mornings. She smiled easily. She made jokes about late fees. She kept a tiny cactus on her desk named George. But that was 3 winters ago. Before everything unraveled like thread pulled too hard. Rachel lost her job when the library cut funding. She lost her apartment 6 weeks later. No savings. No parents. No one to call. And when she told her boyfriend she was pregnant, he didn't stay. "I'm not ready to be a dad," he said, zipping up his jacket. "You'll figure it out." And then he walked out the door. That was 1 year and 2 months ago. Since then, Rachel and baby Emily had been living wherever the night allowed. Sometimes it was the back of an abandoned laundromat. Sometimes a women's shelter, but the beds filled fast. Lately, a half-built parking garage near 14th Street, cold, wet, and crawling with rats. Rachel slept sitting up, so Emily wouldn't roll off her lap. Her body ached. Her back throbbed. But she kept whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's got you." She had tried. God knows, she tried. She applied for jobs every week. She took showers in gas station bathrooms. She begged for formula at grocery stores and got chased out more than once. No one wanted to hire a girl with no address, no ID, and a baby in her arms. People judged. Some said she was irresponsible. Others said she was dangerous. Nobody asked how she ended up here. Nobody asked what she had lost. But Rachel, she never begged for pity. She never asked for a handout. She just wanted a second chance. Not for her, for Emily. On that rainy morning, she wasn't standing on that sidewalk because she gave up. She was standing there because she still had hope. That someone would stop. That someone would see. And she had no idea that someone was already watching her from the back seat of a quiet black SUV. And that man, he was about to make the first decision that would change everything. His name was Elliot Wade, 45 years old, tech executive, worth over $200 million. That morning, he wasn't supposed to be on 6th Avenue. He usually took the expressway straight to Midtown. But traffic reports said there was an accident, so his driver rerouted. Just a small decision. A left turn here instead of right. But fate doesn't need big moves to change lives. Sometimes, all it needs is a red light. Elliot sat in the back of his Escalade, reviewing notes for a meeting with investors from Germany. His coffee sat untouched beside him. His mind was on profit margins and quarterly losses. Until he looked out the window. There she was, soaked through, barefoot, holding a baby wrapped in something that barely qualified as a blanket. The child's face was pale. Her fingers curled into Rachel's shoulder, seeking warmth. And Rachel's lips moved slowly, not screaming, just asking, gently, quietly, like someone who'd already been told no 1,000 times. Something hit Elliot at that moment. Something he couldn't explain. He watched a man in a delivery jacket walk past her like she didn't exist. A woman shook her head and muttered, "Disgusting." Someone tossed coins near her feet without even stopping. But Rachel didn't flinch. She just held Emily closer, whispering something soft like a lullaby. Elliot leaned forward. "Stop the car." His driver, startled, glanced back. "Sir, now? Pull over." The SUV came to a gentle stop near the curb. Elliot stepped out into the cold drizzle without a word. His Italian leather shoes hit the wet concrete. His blazer soaked almost instantly, but none of it mattered. He walked up to her slowly, not wanting to startle her. Rachel didn't notice him at first. She was rocking Emily, her lips pressed to the baby's forehead. Then she looked up. Their eyes met. And in that second, something passed between them, not words. Not logic, something human. "What's her name?" Elliot asked, voice low, steady. Rachel hesitated. Then, "Emily." Her voice cracked just saying it. "Has she eaten?" Rachel shook her head. "Not since yesterday." Elliot looked at the baby, lips dry, eyelids fluttering. He looked at Rachel, soaked, shivering, eyes full of exhaustion but not shame. And then he said 6 words that would rewrite her future. "Come with me. I'll help you." Rachel hesitated. Her arms tightened around Emily. She had never ridden in a luxury car, never spoken to a man in a press designer's suit. Her eyes flicked to the driver, then back to Elliot. "Why me?" she wanted to ask. Why now? But when she looked at his face, it wasn't pity staring back. It was purpose, calm, conviction. She nodded slowly, then followed him toward the SUV. The driver opened the door. Rachel stepped in cautiously, still holding Emily like porcelain. She sat at the edge of the seat, afraid to touch anything. The soft leather, the glossy dashboard, it all felt unreal. Elliot got in beside her. He didn't speak. He just gave the driver an address, Brookside Diner, 12th and Hill. Rachel blinked. A restaurant? The ride was quiet. The baby whimpered. Rachel tried to soothe her, but her hands were trembling. Elliot noticed. He reached over and pulled a soft cloth napkin from the console compartment. "Here," he said gently, handing it to her. "For Emily." Rachel took it with both hands. "Thank you," she whispered. When they arrived at the diner, Elliot stepped out first. He held the door for her. The hostess looked confused as they entered, a sharp-suited man with a soaked, barefoot woman carrying a baby? But Elliot didn't care. "A corner booth, please. Somewhere quiet." They were seated near the window. Outside, rain continued to drizzle. Inside, the smell of coffee and hash browns filled the air. Elliot ordered without hesitation. Hot oatmeal with banana slices, 2 plates of scrambled eggs and toast, warm milk, and a bowl of chicken soup. The waitress looked at Rachel. "Anything for you, honey?" Rachel shook her head. But when the food arrived, she stared at it like it might vanish. "You can eat," Elliot said softly. "It's okay." She hesitated, then reached for the warm milk. She fed it to Emily first, slow, careful sips. Then, as the baby began to relax, Rachel picked up the spoon and tasted the soup. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. She hadn't eaten hot food in days. Her last full meal had been a half sandwich, donated and stale. Now, the warmth of the broth spread through her chest like fire in winter. She chewed slowly, almost reverently, each bite a reminder. "You're still human. You still matter." Elliot watched her quietly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer lectures. He just listened. After the meal, Rachel wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. She looked at him. "Why are you doing this?" Elliot paused, then said, "Because someone once saved me too." And in that moment, Rachel realized. This might not be charity. This might be connection. But she had no idea that her chance at a better life would come down to one small object she hadn't even noticed was missing. The rain had stopped by the time they left the diner. The air was damp, the pavement glistening like black glass. Rachel stepped outside holding Emily, full for the first time in days. She didn't know how to say thank you enough. Didn't know how to ask if this would happen again. But Elliot, sensing her unspoken worry, reached into his wallet. He pulled out a sleek white business card. Embossed. Minimal. Just his name and a phone number. "Call me," he said. "Give me 3 hours to finish a meeting. Then, wherever you are, I'll come." He paused. "I'll make sure you and Emily are safe. Really safe." Rachel held the card like it was gold. Something about the way he said it, like it was a promise carved into stone. She nodded, unable to form words. Then he was gone. The black SUV disappeared into traffic. Rachel stood there for a moment, unsure what to do next. But her heart felt full. For once, she had a number, a name, a door, maybe, opening. She walked down Hill Street, holding Emily close. They boarded a small city bus heading back toward the east side, toward the same alley where she'd slept the night before. The seats were cold, the passengers quiet. Rachel sat in the corner, gently rocking Emily. She reached into her coat, checked her pocket, still there. The card. Safe. But somewhere between stops. As she adjusted Emily's blanket, as she shifted in her seat, as the bus bumped over a pothole, the card slipped. It fluttered silently to the floor beneath her seat, then skidded sideways near the exit. No one noticed. Rachel got off 2 stops later. Emily was still asleep. The sky had cleared slightly. She walked back toward the shelter's courtyard and sat on a wooden bench in the shade. She looked at the time. Still an hour before she could call. She reached into her coat, felt around, checked again. Nothing. Her pulse quickened. She turned her pockets inside out. Still nothing. She stood up, checked under the bench, looked around the sidewalk. Still nothing. Then the realization hit her like a wave to the chest. The card was gone. Gone. The only lifeline she had. The only way to reach the man who saw her. The first stranger who treated her with dignity. Vanished. She stood frozen. Emily stirred softly against her chest. Rachel whispered, "No, no, 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 not now. Not this." Her breath came faster. Her knees felt weak. She crouched, searching frantically through her torn bag, her sleeves. Even inside Emily's blanket. Still nothing. The wind picked up. Leaves danced across the sidewalk like they were mocking her. She sat back down, hands trembling. God, why now? And just blocks away, Elliot sat in a glass-walled boardroom, glancing at his phone between charts and slides, waiting for a call that would never come. Exactly 3 hours later, Elliot stood up from the polished wood conference table. The meeting was over. The investors had smiled, shaken hands, and promised follow-ups. He should have been pleased, should have felt accomplished. But all he felt was distracted. He pulled out his phone. No calls, no messages, no unknown numbers. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then sat back down. Maybe she changed her mind, he whispered. His assistant walked by with coffee, but he waved it away. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head lowered. Maybe she didn't believe me. Maybe she thought I was just being polite. Or maybe she was never serious at all. He hated that last thought. But it crept in anyway. He remembered how Rachel had looked, soaked, shivering, but proud. Not desperate, not manipulative. He could still see the way she'd fed Emily first, before even tasting the soup. No, she hadn't been faking. Something was wrong. He stood up suddenly. David, he called to his driver. Take me back. The diner. Hill Street. Now. The SUV pulled out from the office garage and melted into city traffic. Meanwhile, Rachel had already gone back. She ran, half walked, half prayed, carrying Emily all the way back to that little diner. Her feet hurt. Her arms ached. Her mind was racing. Maybe the card fell inside. Maybe someone found it. Maybe, just maybe, it's still there. She pushed open the diner door. Same smell. Same booths. Same gentle clatter of silverware. Her eyes scanned the floor. Nothing. She rushed to the booth where they'd sat. Checked under the table. Lifted the napkin holder. Still nothing. Excuse me, she asked the waitress, out of breath. Did anyone find a small card here earlier? White. Just a name and number. The waitress gave her a polite smile. We cleaned everything, sweetheart. Didn't see anything like that? Sorry. Rachel nodded slowly. Her throat tightened. She stepped outside. The air had warmed. Sunlight painted the sidewalk golden. But she didn't feel any of it. She turned to leave, and didn't see the black SUV pulling into traffic just half a block down. Inside the vehicle, Elliot looked out his window, scanning sidewalks, doorways, benches. Nothing. Just as he turned away, the red light changed. The car rolled forward, passed right by the diner. Rachel was standing near the alley beside it, adjusting Emily's blanket, eyes down. Too far to see inside tinted glass. Too close to realize her chance had just driven by the time she stepped back onto the sidewalk. The SUV was gone. They had missed each other by less than 30 seconds. That night, Rachel didn't cry out loud. She didn't scream or curse the sky. She just sat in the corner of an unfinished storage building behind a rundown auto shop. 3 walls, no roof, concrete floor. She laid Emily down on a makeshift bed made of towels and an old jacket someone had thrown away. The baby curled into her side, already asleep. Rachel watched her breathe. The air was heavy. Mosquitoes buzzed in the corners. Wind rustled through holes in the cinder blocks. She whispered, "I'm sorry, baby." I tried. She touched her coat pocket again. Still empty. The weight of it, the silence, the loss, the almost, sat on her chest like a stone. She leaned her head against the wall, eyes open, staring into the dark. And for the first time in weeks, she let her thoughts speak freely. Maybe this is it. Maybe that was our one chance, and I blew it. God sent help, and I dropped it into the gutter. Maybe we were never meant to be rescued. Then, Emily stirred. The baby reached her tiny hand over Rachel's chest, rested it there, a warm little weight. And Rachel felt something rise inside her. Not anger, not panic, something quiet, but strong. Resolve. She sat up straighter. "No," she said aloud. "This is not the end." She looked at Emily's face, peaceful, soft, trusting. "You deserve better," Rachel whispered. "And I don't care if I have to walk every street in this city. I'll find him again. I'll go back to the same spot. Every day if I have to. Someone like him doesn't just vanish." The next morning, Rachel woke early. She cleaned Emily with bottled water, braided her hair gently, fed her the last banana Elliot had bought. She didn't ask anyone for money. Didn't hold out her hand. She walked with purpose. Back to 6th Avenue in Grandview, the corner where it had all started. Same place. Same streetlight. Same crack in the sidewalk where she'd stood in the rain. She stood there again. But this time, not as a beggar. As a mother. Waiting. Hoping. Praying that the man who changed everything in just 5 minutes would drive past again. She watched every black SUV that passed. Every tinted window. Every red light. No Elliot. Not yet. But she stayed. Because deep down, she believed in something most people had already lost. She believed in second chances. That afternoon, the sky turned crisp. The rain had cleared. The sun lit up the city in gold and orange. Rachel was still standing on the corner. She hadn't moved much. Only shifted Emily from one hip to the other when her legs got tired. A shop owner nearby offered her a chair. She declined politely. "I'm waiting," she said simply. The man smiled sadly. "For someone real or someone imaginary?" Rachel didn't answer. She just looked down the road again. Then, a red SUV slowed at the intersection. Not black. Not Elliot's usual ride. But something about it felt familiar. The driver's window rolled down. Rachel turned her head slowly, holding her breath. And then she saw him. Not Elliot, but his driver, the same man from 2 days ago. Their eyes met. His widened. Hers filled with sudden tears. He pointed. "Wait," he said through the open window. Rachel took a step forward. The SUV stopped completely. The driver opened the door and stepped out. She froze, not knowing what to say first. The words tumbled out. "I lost the card," she said, her voice breaking. "I went back to the diner. I searched everywhere. I wanted to call, but Her hands trembled. Emily stirred in her arms. The driver didn't say anything for a moment. He looked at her closely. Her clothes were cleaner than before. Her face was tired, but calmer. And she still held her baby like a treasure. "Miss, you waited here?" Rachel nodded. "Every day. This same spot." Her voice cracked. Is Mr. Wade still willing to help me?" The driver didn't answer right away. He looked at his watch. "He's home today. His brother just flew in from Atlanta. They're having a small gathering. But he did ask me if I ever saw you again." Rachel held her breath. Emily rested her cheek on her mother's shoulder, fast asleep. "He told me to bring you. If your eyes told me you still wanted help." He paused. "And I see it." Rachel's knees almost gave out. She caught herself against the doorframe. Tears rolled down her face, but she smiled through them. "Please," she whispered. "I do." The driver gently opened the back door. Rachel climbed in. Cradling Emily, the SUV pulled into traffic. As the city blurred past her window, Rachel held her daughter close. She didn't know what waited at the end of that ride. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't scared. The SUV turned off the main road and glided down a quiet residential lane. Everything here looked unreal. Trimmed hedges, tall oaks shading manicured lawns. Every house bigger than a dream. Gates whispering wealth and safety. Rachel looked out the window, holding Emily tighter. Her heart beat faster with every turn. This wasn't a motel. This wasn't a shelter. This was a neighborhood where people left Amazon boxes on their porches and trusted they'd still be there. The driver slowed in front of a white brick mansion with ivy along the fence and a porch swaying in the wind. "We're here," he said softly. Rachel stared. The front yard had flowers. Not just planted, arranged. The walkway sparkled like it had been scrubbed clean that morning. "Come," the driver said, stepping out. She climbed down slowly, her shoes scraping the smooth pavement. Emily stirred awake and blinked in the sunlight. The front door opened. Elliot appeared. No blazer this time. Just a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. His hair a little messy. His eyes wide. They locked eyes across the garden. Rachel didn't speak. Neither did he. But something passed between them again, a deeper version of what they'd shared at the diner. He walked down the steps. Rachel froze, unsure if she should speak first. "You came back," Elliot said, voice quiet. Rachel swallowed hard. "I lost the card. I searched for it, but couldn't find it. I waited every day. Same place. I didn't know how else to reach you." Her voice cracked. "I thought I ruined everything." Elliot looked at her, then at Emily. "You didn't ruin anything," he said gently. "You proved something." He stepped aside and gestured toward the open door. "Come in. You're safe here. Both of you." Rachel hesitated for half a second, then stepped forward. The floor beneath her was polished walnut. A chandelier sparkled above. The air smelled like cinnamon and lemon oil. Inside, voices laughed softly. Someone was playing light jazz on a piano somewhere down the hall. Rachel looked around. Her eyes caught on a family portrait by the staircase. Elliot as a boy. Another man, same smile, must be the brother. And a woman with kind eyes, maybe their mother. "There's a guest room down the hall," Elliot said. "Fresh clothes, warm water, food. You don't have to rush." Rachel blinked. Her fingers touched the wood of the stair rail, just to be sure it was real. She looked at Emily and whispered, "This is real, baby. We're really here." And for the first time in over a year, she walked into a house without being afraid she'd be asked to leave. Later that evening, the house was quiet again. Most of the guests had gone. Elliot's brother, Gavin, lingered in the backyard with a drink, watching the trees sway in the breeze. Inside, the dining room was lit warm. Candlelight flickered gently against the polished wood. Rachel sat at the table, not hunched, not tense, just present. Her hair was damp from a shower. She wore a soft cotton sweater one of the housekeepers had left on the guest bed. Emily lay asleep in a crib nearby, her little breath steady. Across from Rachel, Elliot poured her a glass of water. "You don't have to talk about anything," he said gently. "But if you want to, I'm here." Rachel looked at the table for a long time. Then, she spoke. "I used to work at a library," she began softly. "Back in Huntsville. I loved it. The smell of books. The way kids listen when you read to them." She smiled faintly. "But the funding got cut. They let half the staff go. I was one of them. I thought it was just a rough patch. Then the rent went up. I tried to keep up, picking up part-time jobs. Cleaning. Stocking shelves. Babysitting." Her voice faltered. "Then I met Ian." A pause. He was a delivery driver. Thoughtful. Kind. Said all the right things. And when I told him I was pregnant, he smiled. Said we'd figure it out. Her hands clenched lightly. He even kissed my belly one night and said, "I'll be the father I never had." She looked up, eyes damp. Then one day, he said he had to visit his mom in Georgia. Just a few days. He left on a Friday. Her voice dropped. He never came back. His number stopped working. No goodbye. Just silence. She exhaled, slow and sharp. After that, everything unraveled faster than I could fix it. I couldn't pay rent. No one hired a pregnant woman with no address. The shelters were full. Some nights, I slept sitting up so Emily wouldn't roll onto the sidewalk. Her voice trembled but didn't break. Elliot sat quietly. "Do you know what hurts the most?" Rachel asked, eyes locked on his. "Not the hunger. Not the cold. It was the way people stopped seeing me. I became invisible. Not a person, a problem." She paused. "Until you." The room fell still. Elliot leaned forward, his voice quiet. "You were never invisible. You were just surviving louder than people were willing to hear. Rachel blinked fast, tears slipping free. She nodded, breathed in, and smiled through it. Thank you, she whispered. Not just for the food or the bed, but for making me feel like I still mattered. The next morning, the house felt unusually quiet. Rachel woke early. Emily was still asleep in the crib beside her. A faint smell of breakfast drifted through the hallway. Cinnamon pancakes, fresh eggs. She stepped into the kitchen, hesitantly, unsure if she was allowed. But the staff smiled and waved her in like she belonged. Elliot was already seated at the kitchen island, sipping black coffee. Gavin stood beside him, holding a folded piece of paper in one hand. Morning, Elliot said, offering a warm glance. Rachel nodded. Morning. Gavin looked at her, the kind of look that studies without judgment. Can I show you something? He asked. Rachel blinked. Sure. He placed the folded paper on the counter and slid it toward her. She opened it slowly. At first, the words blurred. She blinked and looked again. Her hands began to shake. It was a rental agreement. An address at the top. A neat 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood, less than 10 minutes from a community preschool. Utilities included. First, you're prepaid. What is this? She whispered. Her eyes darted between the paper and Gavin. It's yours, Gavin said. I bought the lease yesterday. Elliot told me your story, and it reminded me of someone. Rachel couldn't speak. Our mom. Gavin said softly. She was alone, too. 2 boys. No husband. No money. But she carried us like she carried the world. He smiled faintly. She never got this kind of help. But I wish she had. Rachel lowered her gaze. Tears welled again. You deserve to start fresh. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere clean. Somewhere that smells like safety. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Also, one more thing, Gavin said, pulling out a small envelope. He handed it to her. Rachel opened it slowly. Inside was a check. A startup investment. Enough not just for survival, but for a business. Elliot told me you used to work at a library, Gavin said. Do you like books? Rachel nodded, eyes wide, tears falling now without restraint. Then open a children's book corner. Or a pop-up reading cafe. Or a mobile library van. Whatever makes you come alive. She covered her mouth with her hands. Her shoulders shook. I don't know what to say. Gavin stepped closer. Don't say anything yet. Just believe that not everyone walks past people like you. Some of us stop. Rachel looked down at the lease, then at the check, then at Gavin. And for the first time, she cried. Not because she was broken, but because someone believed she could be whole again. 3 weeks later, a small store on the corner of Parkside Avenue lit up its windows for the very first time. The sign above the door read, Little Pages, Stories for Small Hearts. Inside, the walls were lined with colorful books, secondhand donations, a few new releases. Wooden crates served as shelves. A beanbag sat in the reading nook, shaped like a giant smiling whale. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Rachel stood behind the front counter, smoothing the sleeves of her cardigan. She adjusted the sign that read, Story time begins at 10:30 a.m. Emily sat nearby in a high chair, coloring with stubby crayons. She was humming to herself, hair tied up in 2 tiny buns. At 10:27, the doorbell jingled. A woman entered, holding the hand of a boy in a red hoodie, then another, then a dad with twin girls. By 10:33, the reading corner was full. Rachel smiled as she picked up the first book, The Bear Who Slept Through Christmas. She held it up, her voice steady, warm. Once upon a time, she began. The kids leaned in. Some giggled. Some clutched their juice boxes like treasures. Rachel read with rhythm. She paused at the funny parts. She changed voices for the squirrel and the owl. She didn't think about where she had been. She only thought about what was here. Now, at the end of the story, the little boy in the red hoodie raised his hand. Miss Rachel, are there more books? She smiled. Thousands, she said softly. And we'll read every single one. The parents clapped. Someone dropped a small donation in the jar by the register. A teacher from the local elementary stopped by to ask if Rachel would consider weekly visits. Rachel said yes. After everyone had left, she sat down in the beanbag with Emily in her lap. The sunlight through the front window touched both of them like a quiet blessing. You like our little store, baby? She whispered. Emily didn't answer, of course, but she laid her cheek against Rachel's chest and sighed contentedly. And in that moment, Rachel realized, this wasn't just a store. This was a beginning, a place where children could laugh, where stories could heal, and where one woman, who had once slept on concrete with her baby in her arms, could read aloud to a room full of bright, open faces and feel like she had come home. It was a Thursday afternoon. Rachel was behind the counter, reviewing inventory slips. Emily was asleep in the back room, curled in a little nest of pillows. Everything felt peaceful. The door was locked for the lunch break. The lights dimmed. Only the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional sound of passing cars filled the quiet. Then the phone rang. Rachel jumped a little. It wasn't a ring-tone she heard often. She checked the screen. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something, instinct maybe, told her to pick up. "Hello?" she said, cautious. There was silence. Then a woman's voice. Soft, deliberate, heavy with something unspoken. "Is this Rachel Monroe?" Rachel hesitated. "Yes, who's this?" A pause. "My name is Claire," the woman said. "I'm calling from Atlanta. I'm Ian's sister." Rachel's heart stopped. Ian. The name hit like thunder. The air left her lungs. She clutched the counter for balance. "Ian. Your brother." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes," Claire said, gently. "I've been trying to reach this number for a year. It was disconnected. I only just got through." Rachel's mind raced. Thoughts collided. Why now? Why is she calling now? What does she want? I haven't heard from Ian since before Emily was born," Rachel said. Silence. Then Claire sighed, voice trembling. "Rachel, he didn't abandon you." Rachel blinked. "What?" "He was in a car crash the same day he left. He never made it back home. He was in a coma for 4 months." Claire paused. "He passed away quietly. A long time ago." Rachel gripped the phone tighter. She felt the room shift. She sat down slowly on the nearest chair. "He never made it back." "No. He talked about you a lot. I saw the messages. He wanted to marry you. He was happy about the baby." Claire's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry you never got to know." Rachel covered her mouth. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. "I thought he left. I thought I was alone." Her voice shook. "I hated him for it. He never meant to disappear, Rachel. He loved you. And—" Claire hesitated. "I believe you have his child." Rachel looked at the back room, where Emily was still sleeping. "Yes," she said. "Her name is Emily." There was silence again. Then Claire spoke, tears barely hidden. "Our mother is still alive. She's old now. She thinks Ian left this world with nothing behind. But now, there's Emily." Rachel's throat tightened. "If you're willing," Claire said, "we'd love to meet her. To meet you." Rachel closed her eyes. Her tears weren't pain now, they were release. "Yes," she said softly. "I want that too." 3 days later, Rachel packed a small overnight bag. Just 2 changes of clothes, a couple of board books, and Emily's favorite bunny doll with one ear missing. She stood by the front window of Little Pages, watching the taxi pull up. Elliot had offered to drive. Even Gavin said he'd clear his schedule. But Rachel had politely declined. "This is something I need to do on my own," she'd said. "Just me and Emily." And so, that morning, mother and daughter boarded a train bound for Atlanta. The ride was quiet. Rachel stared out the window, watching fields blur into trees, then neighborhoods, then the edges of a city she had never stepped into, but that had once held the man she thought had vanished. Emily fell asleep in her lap halfway through the journey. Rachel brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead and whispered, "You're going to meet your grandma today, sweetheart. She doesn't even know how much she already loves you." They arrived just after noon. Claire was waiting by the station doors, a tall woman in her mid-40s, red scarf. Eyes that looked a little too much like Ian's. She held a bouquet of sunflowers. Rachel stepped off the train and froze. Claire smiled softly. "You look exactly how he described you," she said. Stepping forward, Rachel smiled nervously. "He told you about me?" "All the time. More than I deserve to hear, honestly." Claire looked down at Emily. "And this must be the miracle he never got to meet." Emily peeked from behind Rachel's coat. She didn't cry. She didn't cling. She simply stared. Claire crouched gently. "Hi there. I'm your auntie, and I've been waiting to meet you for a long time." Emily blinked, then leaned into her mother's leg. "She's shy," Rachel said. "She's smart," Claire replied. They drove in silence for a while. Rachel looked out at a city that seemed both familiar and foreign. "She's at home waiting," Claire said. "Our mother. She uses a walker now. And she doesn't speak much these days. But when I told her, when I said you were coming, she cried." Rachel looked down at her hands. I don't know what to say to her. Claire smiled. You don't have to say anything. Just let her see Emily. That's more than enough. They pulled up to a small brick house with white shutters. A porch swing creaked gently in the breeze. Wind chimes tapped like whispers. Claire opened the door. Rachel stepped inside. And there, sitting in a soft recliner by the window, was Ian's mother, thin, quiet, eyes already wet. Rachel walked forward slowly, then knelt. This is Emily, she said, voice trembling. Your granddaughter. The old woman reached out both hands. And for a moment, no one spoke. Because some truths don't need words. That night, after dinner, a soft, quiet meal of cornbread and soup, Rachel and Emily were shown to the guest room. Claire offered to help with the crib. But Rachel smiled. We're used to tight spaces. This feels like a palace. Claire chuckled and said good night. But before she closed the door, she paused. There's one more thing. Something Ian left behind. I wasn't sure when to give it to you. She stepped away and returned holding a small, weathered shoebox. He kept this in his closet. I found it weeks after the funeral. But I never had the courage to open it until I knew you were real. Rachel sat on the edge of the bed. Claire placed the box in her lap. She lifted the lid. Inside was a small stack of folded papers, handwritten notes, napkins, receipts, all scribbled with one repeating phrase. Names for the baby. Rachel's hands trembled as she opened them. Each one had a different name, followed by tiny comments in Ian's handwriting. Skylar, sounds too trendy. Jasmine, her laugh will smell like this. Emily, simple, honest. I can already imagine calling her that. Rachel gasped softly. She hadn't known. She'd picked the name Emily weeks after giving birth, not knowing Ian had thought of it too. Tears filled her eyes. He picked her name, she whispered. Under the papers was a small, plush giraffe with a tag that read, To our little explorer. And beneath that, a postcard. On the back was a short message. In his neat, almost nervous handwriting. If anything ever happens to me, and she makes it here without me, tell her I loved her. Tell her I wanted to be the kind of man she could brag about. And tell my daughter, she was already enough before she ever took her first breath. Rachel clutched the card to her chest. She couldn't speak. Claire sat beside her. He wrote that before he left, she said quietly. He never stopped believing in both of you. Rachel looked over at Emily, sound asleep, her bunny doll in one arm. The giraffe now tucked gently under the other. And for the first time in a long time, Rachel felt something settle inside her. Closure, not just from abandonment, but from misunderstanding. She hadn't been left behind. She had been loved. Deeply, quietly, faithfully, even in absence. Rachel returned to Brooklyn on a Sunday evening. The train ride home felt different, lighter. Emily slept most of the way, her arms wrapped tightly around the little giraffe. Rachel didn't speak much. She just watched the world outside the window blur past. And for once, she didn't feel like she was being left behind. She felt like she was catching up. Back in her neighborhood, the taxi pulled up in front of the bookstore. The lights were off. It was after hours, but even in the twilight, little pages looked warm. Familiar. Home. She unlocked the door slowly and stepped inside. The scent of books and cinnamon still lingered in the air, just as she'd left it. Emily stirred in her arms, blinking. We're home, Rachel whispered. She set Emily down gently on the beanbag and walked toward the back counter. There, sitting quietly atop the register, was an envelope. Handwritten. No stamp. Just her name, Rachel. She opened it. Inside was a simple letter, no signature, no return address. I stopped by while you were away. I saw the photos on your wall. The children smiling, the books piled high. The little crayon drawings near the corner shelf. This place has more than pages. It has heart. Enclosed is something to help you grow it even more. Keep planting. Keep believing. You never know how far a story can travel. At the bottom of the envelope, folded in half, was a check. Rachel gasped. It was enough to double the space of little pages. Enough to bring in more books, start a mobile reading van, maybe even hire a second staff member. She looked around her shop. The colors, the light. Emily quietly flipping pages nearby, humming. Her fingers trembled around the paper. Her heart did not. She didn't know who had left it. Elliot? Gavin? Claire? Or maybe someone who once stood in her shoes, watching the world pass by, waiting for it to stop. She didn't need to know. All she knew was she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was becoming someone new. That night, as she turned off the lights and stepped outside. Rachel looked up at the city skyline and whispered, "Thank you for every door that closed and for the one that stayed open." Then she locked the door of her shop, took Emily's hand, and walked home. She didn't know it yet, but tomorrow morning, someone very familiar would be waiting on the other side of that bookstore window. The next morning, Rachel arrived early. She liked the stillness before the rush of story time. She flipped on the lights, straightened the display table, unboxed a new donation set, Fairy Tales from Around the World. Emily was coloring in the corner. The bell above the door hadn't rung yet, but something tugged at Rachel's attention. She turned toward the window, and there he was, Elliot, standing on the sidewalk, hands in his coat pockets. Same gentle look in his eyes. A small paper bag in one hand. Coffee, maybe. Rachel smiled before she realized it. She stepped to the door and opened it. "Good morning," he said. "You came back," she said, breath caught in her chest. "Of course I did. I said I'd be watching, just not always from the front row." He held up the bag. "You still like cinnamon raisin?" Rachel laughed. "Always." They stepped inside. Elliot looked around the store, more full now than ever. More colorful. Alive. "This place, it's different," he said. "So am I," Rachel replied. He nodded. "You're stronger than most people I know." Rachel looked at him. There was silence, the good kind. The kind where neither needed to explain how far they'd come. Then Elliot reached into his coat again. This time, not a card. A small folded flyer. "My company's launching a literacy foundation," he said. "Mobile book buses. Reading programs in low-income neighborhoods. Outreach centers for single moms. We need someone to lead the community side." Rachel blinked. "You mean work with you?" "Work with, not for," he smiled. "I don't want a face for the program. I want a heartbeat. And you, Rachel, you've already built one here." She looked down at the flyer. At the title, "Read Forward, Stories That Move." Then at Emily, humming to herself while drawing butterflies on construction paper. Rachel's eyes softened. She looked back at Elliot. "You really think I can do this?" He didn't answer with words. He just looked at her like she already had. And that was enough. She took a deep breath. Then she nodded. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." 6 weeks later, the sun had just peeked over the rooftops of East Flatbush. Sidewalks still damp from the night rain. Coffee carts opening. Children tugging at backpacks, late for school. And parked right outside Little Pages, gleaming in soft blue and white, was a brand new vehicle. Not a delivery van. Not a food truck. But something different. Across the side, in bold lettering, "Read Forward, Stories That Move." Below it, "Powered by Rachel Monroe." Inside, rows of shelves hugged the walls, picture books, bilingual tales, early readers. There was a carpeted corner with beanbags, fold-out tables for crafts, a speaker system, a bulletin board for drawings from every stop. Rachel stood at the curb, keys in one hand, Emily in the other. Elliot walked up beside her. "Your first tour stop is the Bronx Community Shelter," he said. "They're expecting 35 kids, all under 10. Rachel nodded. "And snacks?" "Already packed. Juice boxes, too." He smiled. "I know how you roll now." Rachel looked down at Emily, dressed in a Little Helper t-shirt, then up at the logo on the van. "Do you remember the day we met?" she asked Elliot. "Every second," he said. "Back then I just wanted a warm meal for my daughter. Today, I get to hand out books to kids who don't even know yet they're allowed to dream." Elliot didn't answer. He just watched her with quiet pride. The engine purred to life. Rachel climbed into the front seat. Emily strapped into a booster behind her. She adjusted the mirror, took one breath, and drove, down narrow streets, past her old alley, past the diner, past the corners that used to feel like dead ends. At the shelter, a group of kids stood outside with curious eyes. When Rachel opened the van door, one little girl, maybe 6, stepped forward and asked, "Are you the book lady?" Rachel grinned. "I guess I am. Want to pick the first story?" The girl nodded. Inside, Rachel read aloud. Emily passed out markers. Elliot took photos, but only from the back, never interrupting. By the end of the session, the carpet was covered in crayon drawings, paper crowns, and half-eaten cookies. But one drawing stood out. A little boy had sketched a bus, with books for wheels. Inside the window, he'd drawn a smiling woman holding a baby. Above it, he'd written, "This bus brings dreams." Rachel stared at it for a long time, and smiled, because once she had no home, No number to call. No voice. Now she had all three. And she was driving them forward. 1 mile, one story, one child at a time. That night, the city breathed softer. Windows glowed like quiet lanterns. And inside a small upstairs apartment above Little Pages, Rachel finally exhaled. Emily was asleep, one arm flung over her bunny. The little giraffe still tucked beneath her chin, its stitched eyes now faded, but intact. Rachel sat by the window, a mug of chamomile in her hands. From here, she could see the parked van below. The Read Forward logo still visible under the street lamp. She thought about the little boy who called it a dream bus, about the girl who had hugged her tightly and whispered, "You made me want to read again." And then, she thought of Ian. She reached for the small wooden box she kept near the windowsill. Inside, the napkins, the name list, the old postcard. She unfolded the final note, the one Claire had almost missed, tucked in the back of the box like a secret waiting for its moment. It was a drawing. Simple, crude, a sketch of a tiny bookstore on wheels. And on the roof, written in all caps, Emily's Stories. Rachel blinked back tears. He had imagined it. Even before she did. She looked over at her daughter, breathing softly in sleep, then up at the stars above the skyline. "We did it," she whispered. "Your dream. Our story. It's real now." A breeze stirred the curtains. And maybe it was just the night. Or maybe it was something else. But Rachel felt warmth brush her cheek like a hand saying, "You kept going. I saw it all." She folded the drawing and slid it back into the box, then turned off the lamp, curled beside Emily, and closed her eyes. Outside, a single light stayed on inside Little Pages. A soft amber glow through the frosted window like a lighthouse in the dark. And if someone had walked by at that moment, they might have seen the words scribbled on the chalkboard outside. Tomorrow's story time. The Bear Who Slept Through Christmas, read by Miss Rachel, and beneath that, in tiny script, dedicated to Ian, for believing in stories before anyone else could. It was a rainy Thursday, gray skies, puddles in the gutters, and the kind of chill that made even the city slow down. But inside Little Pages, it was warm. The lamps glowed golden. The rugs had just been vacuumed, and every beanbag seat was taken. Today was a special day, not because of the author visit, not because of the cookies in the back, but because Emily, 6 years old, ponytail lopsided, wearing a blue sweater with glitter stars, was about to read her very first book. Aloud, to everyone. Rachel stood behind her, one hand on her daughter's shoulder. The bookstore was full. Parents, kids, a few curious regulars, even Claire from Atlanta, now a pen pal and holiday visitor. Elliot leaned against the back shelf, phone tucked away, just watching. Emily cleared her throat. She held up the book. The Bear Who Slept Through Christmas. A classic. A favorite. Her hands trembled a little. She looked back at Rachel. Rachel nodded. "You've got this," she whispered. Emily took a deep breath, then began. Her voice was soft at first, but steady, each word carefully pronounced, like it mattered. There once was a bear named Ted who wanted to stay awake, just once, to see what Christmas felt like. The crowd leaned in, not out of politeness, but because something in Emily's voice made them want to listen. She turned each page slowly, eyes scanning ahead. When she got to the part where the bear sees his first snowfall, her voice lit up. It sparkled, like sugar on the sidewalk, she said, smiling. A few kids giggled. One little boy clapped without meaning to. By the time she finished, the room was quiet. Then the applause came. Not wild, not forced, just warm, full, and real. Emily beamed. Rachel knelt beside her, hugging her tight. "I'm so proud of you." "I wasn't scared this time," Emily whispered. "I felt like the bear, awake for something special." Rachel's eyes shimmered. "You were the story today," she said, "and you told it beautifully." Elliot stepped forward, handing Emily a tiny paper crown someone had folded from a bookstore flyer. "Every great reader starts with one great story," he said. "And you just told yours." Emily put on the crown, lopsided and perfect. She looked out at the crowd, then at the little ones waiting their turn. "Can I help them read next time?" she asked. Rachel laughed softly. "You already are." By late spring, the idea had bloomed into something no one expected. The first Little Pages book fair. Not in a convention center, not sponsored by publishers. Just a small school gym, borrowed for a Saturday. Streamers hung from basketball hoops. Paper lanterns made by second graders. But the most beautiful thing? Every booth was run by someone who once thought they had nothing to say. A foster mom who started a picture book about bedtime rituals. A former high school dropout, now leading a zine club for teens. A quiet janitor who published a small poetry collection called Dust and Windows. Rachel stood at the center, helping tape up hand-drawn banners. Emily zoomed by in a cape, handing out bookmarks. Claire manned the bake sale table with lemon squares. Elliot adjusted the mic stand near the tiny stage, where kids were rehearsing their story shouts. 1-minute tales shouted into the world with pride. At noon, Rachel took the mic. Thank you for coming. She scanned the faces, so many she now knew by name. This isn't just a book fair. It's a place where we stop asking who gets to tell stories and start handing them the pen. Applause. Warm, thunderous. And then, the true highlight. Tables filled with blank journals. Each labeled. Your story starts here. People lined up. Young, old, shy, bold, each person took one. Some wrote one sentence. Others filled pages. Some just held it close, like it mattered. Rachel watched from a distance, heart full. And then she noticed one girl, maybe 12, alone in the corner. She was staring at her blank journal. Frozen. Rachel walked over, knelt beside her. Writer's block. The girl shrugged. No one's ever cared what I thought before. I don't even know where to start. Rachel smiled, handing her a pencil. Start with that, she said. The moment you realize someone cared. The girl looked at her, then wrote 5 words. Today, someone listened to me. Rachel blinked, tears rising. You just wrote your first story, she said. Everything after this is just a sequel. And as the music played and laughter filled the gym, Rachel glanced out the open back door. Beyond the playground, under a tree, sat a quiet man watching. Old jacket. Familiar eyes. Rachel's breath caught. She stepped forward. But when she reached the door, he was gone. Only a folded paper rested on the bench. She picked it up. On the front. For the one who made stories possible. And inside, Rachel sat alone on the bench, the folded paper in her hands. The crowd inside the gym grew louder. Laughter. Clapping. The occasional mic feedback from a very enthusiastic second grader reciting their monster poem. But here it was still. She opened the note. Inside was a photograph. Faded. Black and white. A young man. Uniform wrinkled, eyes unsure, standing beside a stack of books in a field tent. On the back, a short line. Stories save people. They saved me. Now they've saved you. Pass it on. No name. No signature. Just a memory, passed like a baton. Rachel didn't need to know who had left it. Because this was never about one person saving another. It was about moments. Small, quiet. Powerful. Moments when someone said, I see you. I believe in your words. Start where it hurts. And right through it. That night, back home, Rachel tucked Emily into bed. The little girl asked, Mom, what happens if I run out of stories? Rachel kissed her forehead. Then you start listening harder, she whispered. Because someone near you is waiting to tell theirs. 2 years later, the Read Forward Foundation had over a dozen mobile units. Little Pages had expanded to a second location in Queens. Claire ran a writing retreat for veterans. Elliot stepped back from corporate work to focus full-time on storytelling programs in shelters. And Rachel? She was invited to speak at a national education conference. On the main stage, in front of thousands. Her voice trembled, just like Emily's once did, but she stood tall. I used to think I was voiceless because I was poor, or scared, or invisible. But the truth is, I just hadn't been given the space to speak. She held up a blank notebook. This is what changed everything. Not a mansion, not a check, not even a bookstore. Just this, and someone willing to wait through the silence. Applause. But after the talk, it wasn't the media that mattered. It wasn't the articles or invitations. It was a teenage boy who came up to her in the hallway, eyes downcast, holding a crumpled flyer from one of her outreach vans. I read your story, he whispered. I thought, maybe I could write mine too. Rachel handed him her pen. You already have, she said. Underscore. Close. Zhang Chuyan En Shi, Trian Cam. Not every story starts with a bang. Some begin in back alleys. In silence. In fear. but they can still lead to light, to libraries on wheels, to paper crowns, to children who once whispered, now shouting poems on makeshift stages. So maybe, wherever you are, in a quiet job, a cramped apartment, a waiting room, a back row of someone else's spotlight, you ask yourself, what would happen if I picked up the pen? Not to be famous, not to be perfect, but to be heard. What if the story you think is too small is the one someone else needs most? And if that feels too scary to begin alone, then look for the Rachel in your world. Or better yet, be the one who listens. Be the one who says, write it down. I'm here. Because stories don't just belong to writers. They belong to everyone brave enough to feel. And that's where the real chapters begin.